Okay, so we call the meeting to order at 6:30 on January 31st. Jenkins, you take the roll, please.
Ms. Dunbar? Here. Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Ms. Feasel? Here. Mr. White?
Here.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move.
Second. Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, so first up we have a presentation from the Berkshire Middle School Geography B. Ms. Carla Baker. Berkshire, which is my favorite middle school.
We're going to be watching for the 8th grade basketball tournament scores.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having us tonight. We are here to educate you on anything and everything you want to know about their Geography Bee. The National Geographic Bee is a nationwide contest for all schools in the U.S., including the U.S. territories. There are 3 levels of competition: school, state, and national. The National Geographic Bee provides the questions and answers which address all levels of knowledge in, are we ready? Geography, like patterns of language, religions, economic activities, political systems, landforms, tectonic activity, cultural and physical systems, tools geographers use, and so on. Now, when we were practicing this, I had comments, that part was very hard. I was expecting to Tonight, Berkshire's 8 Geography B finalists have come to share some of their tips and their experiences with you. From our 6th grade representatives, we have Samira Balraj, Caitlin Brown, and Emily Peterson. Our 7th grade representatives, we have Claire Jones, who was unable to attend, Tristan Nickel, and Hayden Toffner. And our 8th grade representatives, Kira Barr, and unable to attend, Josh Crouch. We have a video that the kids have made because we had so much we had to condense it, so we're going to show that video for you.
Hi everybody. Hi, my name is Caitlin Brown. Hi, I'm Samir. Hi, I'm Claire.
Hi, I'm Tristan. Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, I'm Kira. Hi, I'm Hayden. Yeah, so why are you interested in geography?
I like learning about different countries and like how they all fit together and like the languages and places that people go to in those countries.
Because I like to travel around the world and see all the different places. I like geography because I love to travel, so I like to see how everything, all the countries and stuff kind of go together. I like geography just because my social studies teacher really told me that's a great thing to learn, so I got kind of hooked on that.
That's a good thing.
What's your favorite thing about geography?
More like the funny names of places. Like, I can't think of any like off the top of my head, but there are some pretty weird ones. My favorite thing about geography is the countries, because I like to know where they are.
You get to see how other people in the world have different like customs based on their surroundings and
all of the with the landscape is like plateaus and valleys and mountains. How the earth changes.
My favorite thing about geography is looking at maps and atlases.
What advice would you give to others regarding the bee?
I would say that you need to study more than you think you do because the questions are a lot harder than you might think. You should just have fun and you shouldn't really get so nervous and you should study
I guess it's all about reasoning. So just, when they say, what continent is this in? And you have no idea. Guess Asia, because that's the biggest.
Well, don't get nervous with a hard question. Just take your best guess. We should probably get it right.
What was the bee like?
We sat down and we were asked questions, and there were different rounds, and you could answer 2 questions wrong and then you were out.
There's lots of different rounds. So you kind of just take the written one and you stand up and do one. And then if you have a tiebreaker, then it's the first one to kind of get it right. So there's lots of different levels and you just have to try your best with each.
How would you prepare for the bee?
I usually look at maps and atlases.
What do you do to prepare for the bee?
I took the National Geographic Bees quizzes online, the easy quizzes, so I could prepare for the questions in class.
Thank you to our Sentinel News crew that helped us put that together. And I want to recognize that Tristan and Hayden were our finalists this year. And Hayden, once again, was our building champion. Last year, Hayden got to travel to Washington, D.C. and compete in the National Geography Bee. Is there anything you want to share with us? Got to?
Well, some of the categories are really specific. So one category was completely about glaciers.
And gifts, you want to share about the gifts?
And then there was also an exchange of gifts between. So I got gifts from all of the states.
What did Ohio give?
And we gave candy butters.
Did they give you some kind of outline for things you had to study? Like if you had a whole category of glaciers, that seems pretty intense.
They have books about what you should study and how to prepare.
And something about the places. What were we going to share about that? Oh, how much money you get for scholarships if you place first, second, and third.
First place gets a $25,000 college scholarship.
Wow.
Second place gets $15,000. Third gets $10,000.
Thank you. The state bee is on April the 5th, and Hayden is awaiting his results to see if he advances to the state this year. And in May 20th to the 22nd, the national bee is in D.C. again as well. We have a few questions for some of our board members.
Asia.
I have a question for Mr. O'Brien. Farsi, also known as Persian, is the official language of which country?
Oh, don't look at me.
They forgot
Like Turkey.
No, the correct answer is Iran.
Persian. Can you act like I answered that correctly so I don't have to answer?
So I don't have to get that.
My question is for Mr. White.
Uh-oh.
Gregorian charts, sacred music from the early centuries of the Roman Catholic Church, developed in what country that borders the Adriatic and Ligurian seas?
I would say Iran, but that one was already taken. I don't know. What's the answer?
The correct answer is Italy.
Roman Catholic gave it away.
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Lucas.
You won't live it down. We'll get past it much quicker. You will not live it down. Just say.
Just say Iran. That's right.
One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, was located in which present-day country?
It's in Egypt.
I'm going to say that. Egypt?
Alright, the correct answer is Iraq.
We're not doing very well, are
We are not smarter than a 5th grader. I'm just saying.
we? We're not moving on, are we?
That is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Wow.
So next up is board president's report.
Thank you all.
I'm going to cover, well, I guess one I'll cover, one I'm going to defer. School safety and safety plans, I know that's certainly a topic of interest for everyone, given the events, in Newtown, Connecticut. And certainly the recent press coverage and efforts to enhance school safety. So we will be spending time in our February work session. We're going to have Sheriff Martin come in, and we're going to hopefully cover here's our existing safety plans and the steps we take currently to provide a safe learning environment for our kids, and then discuss other options. So I just want to make sure that people are aware that it's certainly an issue that's top of mind for us, and we'll be investing some time and energy into that effort in the February work session.
Yes.
So the second item, which I'm going to defer to Julie Wagner-Fiesel on, is school funding in the state budget. So Julie, I think at a minimum, is our resident expert on that topic, and will provide us a quick update on what she's hearing and maybe what you heard tonight.
Yep. And I'm going to tag team with Dr. Lucas. As some of you came in, we had the live report from the governor releasing his school funding plan to the public. Just as a little history, if you look at school funding, the state's school funding system was declared unconstitutional, and since go back to Governor Voinovich, the state has been trying to correct that error. Governor Voinovich actually proposed a 0.5% sales tax increase to correct the inequity in school funding, and that was turned down by the voters. And then Governor Taft came in, and he did a whole big study that determined that an adequate cost of funding in Ohio was $4,000 per pupil. But then they would start taking away money because you had this and because you had that. So that never was totally, fully funded either. Then we went to Strickland's model, and it was called the building blocks model. And that wasn't going to fund individual students, but fund individual programs. And the problem with that was that there was never going to be enough money to fully fund all of these individual programs. Like they would give you X amount for science and X amount for math, but that was never ever going to be fully funded. So when Kasich came in, he did away with that funding formula, and we've all been in a holding pattern. Actually, we've probably all been in a holding pattern since DeRolf was declared unconstitutional. And the whole reason it was declared unconstitutional is because school funding is based on the property wealth of your district. So if you look at Central Ohio, and I always do the 270, and we're up at the top of the circle, and so we're a high wealth district, not because we're at the top of the circle, but that just happens where we are geographically. At the bottom of the circle is our 180-degree opposite school district, which is Hamilton Township, and they have a very low wealth property district. So where we would pass a levy and raise millions of dollars, they can't pass a levy to raise that amount of money because their property values are not as high as ours are. And this is very simplified. There's always been that inequity in property values in the state, and so you have school districts who did not, and still to this day, don't have enough money to appropriately fund education, whether it's buildings or operations in their district. So they've been trying to fix this for, years, probably 20 years. And so today, Governor Kasich introduced his funding plan. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised because I was hearing a lot of scary things that Olentangy really would have upset the apple cart here at Olentangy. But what I'm hearing, the biggest thing is that no district will lose money. And so that's the most important thing. And this is state money. I want to make that clear, this is state money. No district will lose money, but remember, since fiscal year 2005, and Todd provided me with this information, our state funding per pupil has actually decreased 41%. So the fact that we've been losing all these years since fiscal year 2005, we're not going to lose anything. So that's a good thing. But the devil is still in the details. Some things that I kind of like about this that will provide us with flexibility is that instead of being mandated to be in class 184 days, they're proposing to open that up and say you're going to have to be in a classroom for X amount of hours during the school year. So that will be able to provide us with some flexibility with our scheduling. And so maybe our schedule may not look like Worthington's schedule. It will just depend on what's right for each school district. They are also going to provide $50 per pupil for testing of gifted and advanced learning students, which is good because right now there is no such funding for gifted students. They're also going to increase funding for special needs students. Another thing that we've been impacted in this district are English as a second language students, and they're going to do increased funding for those students as well. So that I'm very glad to hear those. The problem was today, you always get a sheet that breaks out your district to say what you can expect, and those sheets weren't available today. So I can't say that we're going to get X amount of dollars for special needs and X amount for English translation needs. So we don't have those details yet. But I will just put this out there is that this is a proposal. So I'll caution everybody right now. This is the governor's proposal. It still has to go through the House, and it still has to go through the Senate, and then they will probably have a conference committee to get together to iron out all the differences. This has to be done by June 30th of this year. And some things could be phased in. You know, it may not be like, you know, July 1st we get all this money for special needs students. It may not be that way. So just hold tight. And then I want Dr. Lucas to comment on what he's heard from his superintendents.
Before we move on to that, is there an opportunity, I know we have a school funding and action committee, is there any sort of call to action or any sort of, I know we've used them for letter writing in support of this plan or talking about different parts of this plan that we should?
We are actually very lucky in that the chairperson of that committee, Holly Hansen, before we knew that the meeting was going to happen today, back in November, she lined up Tom Ash, and he's the executive director of the Superintendents Association. She lined him up to be our go-to guy, and he has been briefing us all along, and he's going to his group was the only group besides the superintendents that was invited to listen to the governor today. So Holly aligned us with the right people from the get-go. So that was really, really smart. I'm so appreciative of her efforts on that end. And then in the past, we've always done emails out to our parents saying, hey, we need you to contact your elected officials on this issue. So once we have the meat of the proposal, then we'll be able to see what happens going forward. Because both the House and the Senate are both highly Republican, I don't see a lot of major changes happening because they tend to align with the governor. But we'll just have to see. But yeah, Holly, as I was getting information today, I've been feeding Holly everything. And she was actually listening at home to the governor's presentation on her computer at home tonight. So that committee will be up and running and very appreciative of her work.
I was fortunate enough to be there today.
And it was an invited group.
Yes, and actually they invited every superintendent there, and I'm not sure anyone missed. But one thing I heard loud and clear, and I heard Dick Ross say this when I came in, this is not a new funding formula, this is an education improvement plan. And the reason I say that is in response, Stacy, to your School Funding Action Committee. I think the governor made it perfectly clear that he wants politics stripped away from this whole piece, and I believe his quote was, "Our greatest challenge, job readiness."
Yep.
That's the biggest challenge that we face. Now, I will have to tell you this. This is the first time the governor has addressed the superintendents. I was extremely pleased in the fact that when he right off the bat said, no one will lose money this year. That's a good thing because, as you know, we get approximately $6 to $7 million out of a $150 million budget. It doesn't sound like a lot, but believe me, we were going in thinking we're probably going to lose that. We will not lose that. The guarantee stays, but I think he also made it perfectly clear that he wants that to disappear. What does that mean 2 years from now? I don't know. I'm not sure he knows. But I think he sends basically the same message that we've sent here in the fact that education has changed, the world has changed, and we need to provide a quality product at an efficient cost. And like it or not like it, that's what it is. And that's not just for the education world, that's for the world as a whole. So we were encouraged. We're also encouraged by the fact of his willingness to open door. We will talk. They set aside $300 million for an innovation fund grant. And I think that's where we're going to have to, for lack of a better term, make our hay. There's not going to be any extra money for us outside of they're doing away with the unit funding. The gifted funding is going to be individual. The special education funding, the ESL funding, we may pick up a little bit of money there. We do have the potential to pick up some dollars in that innovation grant. I've already talked to Jack. I've already talked to Keith. We'll talk to Mark. They'll get their pencils going because there are a lot of things we're doing with Columbus State and Ohio State that fits right into that innovation piece that we could potentially get some dollars headed our way. So overall, it was a very general meeting, but I believe it was very positive in the fact that here's the bottom line. And he said this probably 4 times. If you have money, you're going to get less money. If you don't have money, you're going to get more money. And as they say, they're trying to get that per pupil valuation to the 250,000 mark. I think we're at like 247. So I know when Becky and when I first left, I said, well, picture a peanut butter pie. We might get a peanut of the pie. But at least we got everything we got before. And when I say the peanut, I'm talking additional dollars because we're going to get what we used to have. But I think they're going to reward innovation. They're going to reward creativity. They're going to reward shared services. They're going to reward return on investment. I wrote these down. Better comparative tools. They're going to be comparing fiscal performance, school performance, student performance. Well, you get this postcard in the mail, and I carry it around with me all the time to coffee chats, and I keep talking about fiscal performance, student performance, school performance. The figures don't lie. We're at the highest in Central Ohio. We're up with the highest. Upper Arlington is ahead of us. We're near the lowest in expenditure per pupil. You can cut that any way you want to cut that and talk about that any way you want to talk about that. But you can't deny the fact that we have one of the highest performing districts at one of the lowest cost. You can't cut that any negative way. So I was impressed with the governor. I believe he's impressed with Olentangy. And we will continue to work toward providing high quality education at a very efficient cost.
That innovation funding piece that he talked about, it's $300 million that you will have. It'll be like a grant competition, and districts will have to apply for it. He said there will be a group, could be outside of education, that decides which districts get this money, but when it's gone, it's gone. So we need some good grant writers, to tap into some of those funds. And I think we have the ideas there of where we'd like to put that money, and so it's just going to be a matter of going after it. And it's open to all 614 districts. So 614 divided by 300 million. Of course, some may not apply, but I think we will. So.
Oh yes, we will apply.
Good. All right. Thank you, Julie.
Yep.
That's very helpful. Dr. Lucas, you're up. Superintendent's report. Raise the thumb up.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Are we ready to go, Keith? Oh, I forgot my my certificates for Board Recognition Month. I know Karen had passed these out already, but I had to take them back because I want to present them individually. Again, welcome to everyone. We do have, by the way, a few interns in the crowd that are looking to get their superintendent certificate. So if you see some faces you haven't seen out there for a while, Marty and Nicole and Jeanette, I believe that's the three, right? Are there any others that I'm leaving out? I said, you really think you want to do this? Really? So at any rate, we are very, very happy to have them here this evening. And they're going to be going through several activities over the next rest of the school year so that they can work toward their superintendent licensure. Board of Education meeting, we're going to talk a lot about good things, but first and foremost, this is Board Recognition Month. Now usually I have this long piece of material that I get from Bassett that I read word for word, and I'm thoroughly convinced it's better coming from the heart, so therefore I'm not going to read anything. I'm just going to say to you, you have a often thankless job, as we all know, because you get phone calls, you get emails. My dad always told me growing up, there's two things you don't mess with, people's kids and people's money, and we mess with both of them. So therefore, sometimes you're in a very, very thankless position because you're going to make 50% of the people unhappy. But what I can tell you is this, the strength or the backbone of a community is their school system. And it's very, very critical that we get individuals in leading those school systems that want to make a difference. And whatever your views are, it doesn't matter. I think what's critical is the fact you're willing to put forth the effort. And yes, you get paid a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, we can almost call it a volunteer position because you all know the number of hours you put in, not only in these board meetings, but when you go to ball games or band concerts or graduation, whatever that may be, or Kroger or wherever, someone is there to say, hey, what's going on? Fill in the blanks. So with that said and done, I want to tell you that I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort. I appreciate your willingness to do what is best for the 17,500 young people that we have coming through our doors on a daily basis. I have a token of our appreciation. Obviously, it's not much because our board recognition budget is very, very small. I think it's at $12.57 now. Karen, is that what it is?
Well, actually,
But as the other story that I'll share with you someday, the sock story, as my mom always used to say, it's the thought that counts. So therefore, with that said, I want to personally thank Julie Wagner-Fiesel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to thank Dave King. Thank you. I want to thank Adam White. Thank you. I want to thank Board Vice President Stacy Dunbar. Thank you. And I want to thank Board President Kevin O'Brien. Thank you, sir. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, next, talk a little bit about OEF Casino Night. That was this past Saturday, and again, we had a great turnout. I want to say, once again, not only the fact that it was a good evening, but the amount of volunteer work that those individuals put forth for our school system. They give out scholarships to our students. They give out professional development dollars to our teachers, and it's just a great, great evening. And I would again encourage anyone that did not get to make this month's casino night next year at basically the same time, same place. We will have casino night, and you are all invited. Last but not least, under good things, we had the Project 2020 Summit on January 16th and 17th. We'll have a report on this whole Project 2020, I believe it's March, but the summit was attended by roughly 50 community members, staff members, again, to talk about what's the place going to look like. And I will share just one story that I share with a lot of people about Project 2020 Summit. Second day, I was in and out during the entire day, and I did notice one thing while I was in and out. We had a mother at one of the tables whose child was in kindergarten and wasn't in school that day, and she sat there all day long. Every time I would go in and out, she's sitting there with what? An iPad. She's a kindergartner. And during the time that it especially struck me was when we were talking about what's the place going to look like in 2035, not 2020, 2035. Obviously, none of us have any idea what the place will look like. But we were talking about, from an adult standpoint, we were talking about professional development. We were talking about how do we move teachers, how do we get them through evaluation systems. In other words, it's hard to think to 2035 without thinking about today. And as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think that kindergarten student says it all in the fact that how are we going to deal with individuals that have iPads when they're in kindergarten and they become juniors 10 years from now, 11 years from now. Textbooks are out of the picture, believe me. Because when we talk about powering down or tuning out, you put an iPad in a kindergartner's hands and then bring them back to the traditional way. I think Dick Ross said it best. We're educating people in the education world like we did a century ago. They will tune out. So that's the challenge for all of us in how do we reach those kids, because it's not just going to be that one child. Everybody is up to date in technology and ahead of us. So we have our challenges, but that's part of that Project 2020 Summit. Marty Johnson and that crew will be here, I believe, in March to give the final update findings of that report. Other good things, I move through some of these quickly. Shanahan and Liberty Middle School, if you come by here, as soon as the middle school lets out, you'll see kids just walking around this track. That's called the 50-Mile Club. Those are for the kids that aren't doing anything in the winter, doing anything in regard to such as extracurricular activities. So they come out, and during the winter months, they walk 50 miles. Not one time, of course, but during that entire winter month, and you'll see kids everywhere. Taste of Tribes event at Glen Oak, and that was the study of the Native American tribes in Ohio, and that took place at, as I said, Glen Oak Elementary, and as you can see, we have pictures of students there with their projects. They did a very, very nice job on that activity. Good things also, Indian Springs, almost 350,000 pop tabs and counting to the Ronald McDonald House. We have student-directed one-act plays at Olentangy Orange this weekend. We have the PPT Forum setting loving limits at OOHS on February 6th. We have the Community Forum, as Mr. O'Brien alluded to earlier, on March 7th at 7 p.m. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about this with a slide later on, but that's on the front burner, the school safety piece. And last but not least, the School Funding Action Committee meeting on budget proposals on March 12th. We've pretty well told you what that looks like today. My understanding is the specific printout per school district and how the new funding formula or education improvement plan affects our school district will be out by the middle of next week. So I'm sure we'll have more information for you by then. Some of the Race to the Top updates, we were awarded a grant for professional development on cultural competency. We also, part of that ESC pilot program on the pay for performance. We have 25 Olentangy teachers participating in that, and they can, I'm not going to say win, because it sounds like a contest. I'm going to say earn up to $5,000. That conversation came up a little bit today, not from the governor, but before we got into the meeting, was what's pay for performance look like. I know I made one statement, and again, I'll go back to the achievement of our students If I were an educator in this school district, I would be saying, I'm all over pay for performance, because you don't get to 107.3 just by showing up. You get there because you have talented people, and we're very, very fortunate to be in a district like this that have parents that high priorities, very good students, and excellent professionals working with those individuals. Last but not least, all of our administrators have completed the teacher evaluation system training, and now they're providing SLO, student learning objective training, to our educators, and that's part of that whole race to the top piece that I'm updating you on a monthly basis. Next, I want to say a little bit, I know Becky's going to say a lot more about this, but I want to talk about our rating meeting that we had last week in Chicago, only by the fact that, as you can see in Moody's and S&P, that's our rating, and we're trying to get to that AAA piece. But what I want to say more about it, Becky will get more into the details, was the fact that this is my second one of these rating meetings, probably my first month here, something like that. We went to a rating meeting. It's very gratifying to go before financial analysts that have taken your plan or your 5-year forecast and really dissect it as a committee. And you sit in front of them for roughly 2 hours, one and a half to 2 hours, and you're basically selling the school district. And when the report comes back and you hear things like strong and consistent district management, strong financial operations, conservative budgeting, cost controls, such as wage freezes, eliminating positions, these are individuals that have absolutely no skin in this game. They don't sit in the crowd. They don't pay our taxes. They don't have a clue what we're doing here. They analyze our system from top to bottom, financially, how we're doing academically. We also took our Fallon surveys. They know and understand what do our people feel about the school system. And they sit and they give you a report. Now, granted, we didn't make AAA, and Becky's going to go into more why, because of the high debt that we have. I'm telling you, we're not very far from AAA, and I think it would do all of us good to take that trip and really hear it, because sometimes the negativity just becomes like noise, you just hear that noise, and it's always good to see individuals that are taking a different view and perspective of the school system and saying, I got to tell you, what you're doing is very good. It's very good. So that's what I want to say about that credit rating meeting. And again, that concern, their concern, enrollment growth, has always been the concern. But guess what? When you're good, people do want to move there. By the way, you can have the opposite effect and be bad, people want to move out. I think that was another statement the governor said today. I believe one of the poor districts looking at, look, we all have choices on where we live. And those that have will pay more. Pretty simple. School safety preview. Once again, Mr. O'Brien talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. We will have Russ Martin at our board work session on February the 13th. We will have our 3 school resource officers. We do have our safety plans. I know you've seen that on the news sometime. Ours is filed with the state. The requirement is every 3 years on the update. We do update ours every year. We do have a safety committee. We review all of our safety plans. That includes all police and fire agencies in the district. That is on the front burner, as it should be. I took a trip a couple weeks ago, and I went through Newtown, Connecticut. And I have to tell you this, it doesn't look a whole lot different from Olentangy. It doesn't look a whole lot different. That could be anywhere in the USA, and I think I can speak for any school district in the state of Ohio and the nation saying safety is a top priority, and we will continue to look at that, and we want to address the specific things that we are doing, can do in the future at that work session. And of course, as we already mentioned, March the 7th, we will have a community forum on that same topic. Agenda items we want to talk about tonight. We had Mr. Ray give a report at our last work session on high school graduation requirements. Again, just a reminder, I know the question has been about the speech and the career planning piece, and it almost reminds me about the same conversation 4 years ago about strings. I hear people say you're eliminating. There is no elimination there. There is no longer a requirement to graduate with that specific class, but there is no elimination, meaning that if anyone wants to take speech, they have that right and that ability to continue to take that coursework as we go down through. We have from the supplemental committee, we have the recommendation to add the high school service club advisor. I think the breakdown was provided to you as far as how much time that individual, and I know it becomes ironic at times to say you're paying a service club advisor, but they're going way above and beyond their duty. Not to mention the fact when our kids hit their freshman year, that clock starts ticking as far as how much service they provide. And as we all know, those of us that have put kids through school at the upper end, the college level, knows that when that goes on that resume or that college application, it's vitally important to have volunteer work. And that's what that service club advisor will be doing for those individuals. Graduating seniors, I believe the majority of those seniors are from Oasis, but I know we have at least one that graduated early, as they say. We had one last year, if you recall, Josh Perry. We have another one this year that's graduating early, has fulfilled all the requirements, going off onto the next level, the higher ed for next year, starting this semester. Utility manager software would be in regard to that energy conservation piece that we kind of took within, and we have a contract with InfoSnap to create online forms. I think we've all had that talk, that frustration piece. In fact, I think when I filled out my 6th or 7th emergency medical form of the year, I said, I'm not filling any more of these out. We're going to get this right. We're going to do it online. That's what that contract's all about with InfoSnap, to create online forms for all of our parents in the school district so that it populates it. And when you go back in, unless there's been changes, you don't have to continue to feed the computer, as they say, with information. That being said, again, I thank you for your efforts in being board members, and I will entertain any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Seeing none, no questions for Dr. Lucas. Becky, Treasurer's Report?
Apparently I'm going into more detail than he just did, even though he told you everything there was to tell you about the rating presentation.
So don't go into
I'd love to steal her thunder is what I'm saying.
We're fine with them.
So basically we did a great job. They did affirm, basically what they're looking for is a longer trend of the slowdown in the growth in the district. They're not convinced that that we're not going to see that high growth, residential growth. So they're looking for that just to make sure. I think within a couple, 2-3 years, if they continue to see that growth, continue to see the board go along with the financial plan that we have in place, and the educational product continues to be top, I think that the district would get to AAA, but they really want to see that kind of flatten out.
We should probably just put in perspective too the value of AAA, and with us really not being, or as we look at our plans going forward, a big debt issuer in the coming years, it's not like we're going to get a significantly different coupon rate on our debt.
No.
Current ratings versus a AAA, so it's kind of a nice to have, and we should continue to pursue it. But I don't want people to misunderstand that it's frankly not a lot of economic value.
It's not a huge loss. It's a PR thing. It would be fabulous to say we're AAA rated.
Yeah.
But you're right, especially in this market, there's not a lot of difference in the rates between AA1 and AAA.
It'd be kind of like,
but it'd be nice.
Like this weekend, the difference between being Super Bowl champs and Super Bowl runner-up.
I don't know if I would say that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I had to throw that out. I just had to throw that out.
I think it's a difference between getting half of the peanut butter pie and all of the peanut butter pie.
Or the peanut.
Or the peanut. Other than that, with the financials, just to let you know that salaries and benefits are trending under. The educational movement to the right is about 350 to 400,000 less than what we had projected, and then with retirements and then the replacements of some of those and not replacing some, it looks like we're trending about 1.3 million under for the year at the end of the year. So that's a good thing. And I'm sure Todd will fill you in more and more on that as you go on. And just so you know, Todd did a fabulous job. He went with us to Chicago, and I made him do most of the talking about the financial 5-year forecast, and he did a really great job for the district.
Yes, he did. I'll second that.
It's good to hear.
On that retirement issue, Kevin and I had questions because there was an article in the Dispatch, I think last week, about school districts were going to see a flood of retirements. I don't know that we've seen a flood of retirements yet. Yeah, 18.
Out of 1,000.
Yeah, out of 1,000. So,
Yeah.
And it could be because of our age of our teachers. They're not there yet. But several years ago, we tried to offer a early retirement buyout, and we didn't have enough people participate because they like working here.
That's correct.
So we have a good product, so they weren't interested in retiring. So contrary to what you believe, we're not seeing a flood of retirements here.
You may see it increase as you get closer to 2015, but I don't know that it'll be a flood.
Right.
That's all I have.
Terrific, thank you. Next item is public participation session number 1 for general comments. Do we have any?
No.
Let's move into discussion items. I believe Mr. Rafe is here for the second reading of the graduation and retirement policy update.
And Mr. Rafe, I got an update. The 8th graders won.
I did too.
Oh.
I know. Thank goodness.
Who did they play?
41-39 in overtime. I don't have an update on scores or whether or not my daughter hit any shots or anything, so we'll see. All right. But yeah, I did miss her last 8th grade game, so it's decent. His policy. All right, thank you, Mr. Pomeroy. Again, we're going to go through our second reading of our graduation requirement policy 5460. There are the first 3 bullets are the proposed changes, eliminating the requirement for personal finance post-secondary planning for the class of 2015, eliminating speech as a requirement for the class of 2016, and then reducing the social studies requirement from 3.5 to 3 credits, with those indicated being the required courses. State minimums are a half credit of U.S. government, a half credit of U.S. history, and 3 credits. And then again, just a note that speech, personal finance, and post-secondary planning will all be offered as elective courses. Reviewing again for you the rationale, there are basically 3 main points with regards to increased flexibility to allow more students to enroll in dual enrollment classes and preferred electives. The 2 required courses of speech at the 10th grade level and career planning, post-secondary, personal finance, post-secondary planning are half semester elective courses that limit students' choices to take advanced placement classes and preferred electives. So if they want to double up on an art class or a music class or those kind of things, it limits their choices for the students. The second point of the rationale, the required courses are taught in other curricular areas. Speaking and listening standards are taught throughout the English curriculum, and this is especially more relevant with the onset of the Common Core. Just as an example, and it's happening more and more at younger grades. As an example, in the Common Core English Language Arts Literacy Standards, presentation of knowledge and ideas is one of the standards. And the standard says that students will present claims and findings, emphasizing salient points in a focused, coherent manner with pertinent descriptions, facts, details, and examples. Use appropriate eye contact, adequate volume, and clear pronunciation. They'll include multimedia components and visual displays and presentations to clarify claims and findings and emphasize salient points. And then they will adapt speech to a variety of contexts and tasks, demonstrating command of formal English when indicated or appropriate. So those are 3 examples in the 7th grade standards, speaking and listening standards, that are prevalent throughout all of the Common Core courses. So that's where I would contend that those are duplicate curriculum that we don't need to teach twice in a separate required course. And then finally, fiscal responsibility and sustainability. And I'm sorry, I went over the financial literacy standards. The same thing is relevant to the financial literacy standards of the personal finance class. There again, they're not required courses, they're required standards. So we're only required to teach them in somewhere in our curriculum. We're not required to teach them as separate courses. And then the last point, fiscal responsibility and sustainability. We have approximately 1.5 full-time speech teachers per high school when we teach this class as a requirement, and the same for personal finance and post-secondary planning. So eliminating those two core course requirements could potentially save us 9 additional staff positions. Now those staff will be reallocated to help us with future growth. So I also want to, as you consider this recommendation, I want to just describe for you what our curriculum modification process looks like. Any modifications to our curriculum begin with an idea, and those come from any of our stakeholders. Teachers, building administrators, students, board members, a community member, it could come from anywhere. We are required by Article 40 of the Teachers Association contract to have teachers involved in that process and have input into that process. But input doesn't mean that they make the decisions. The administrators make the recommendation for moving forward. The final decision on any curriculum modification process lies with the superintendent's recommendation for board's ratification. And I can assure you in this case, all aspects of this process were followed. And we are presenting to you what we believe to be the consensus opinion of the majority of our high school staff and administration in these areas. Obviously with 3 high schools, having those teams come to complete agreement on any one topic is sometimes difficult, but we believe we are presenting to you the consensus opinion of the majority of our staff. And then finally, Mr. O'Brien had asked for a comparative district analysis, and I had previously sent that to all of you, and it was requested that we have copies of these types of presentations, so there are copies available for anybody who wants all this information. Just a quick summary of the comparative district analysis. We did compare 20 districts that are like us. 1 other district requires speech as a separate graduation requirement. That would be Upper Arlington. No other district requires personal finance or post-secondary planning. 18 of the districts that we looked at have 3 credits of social studies, and 7 currently require economics. Although I have been recently told that there is discussion of a bill to modify the state requirements to include economics. So get lucky, be ahead of the curve.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It looks like you added in Algebra 2, right? Is that new?
Algebra 2 is a state requirement. All students have to take Algebra 2.
So that was already in there? It just looks like it was added. It's the first. Footnotes right here.
Oh, the footnotes. Yeah, that was in the. That was part of the previous modification for the class of 2014. 14. It requires 4 credits of math. So that's not a new one. That one we've had for ever since the initial Ohio core was adopted in Senate Bill 1.
Well, I was going to commend you. You didn't have to say that. You could have just been like, yeah, I just added it.
I did that before.
It was a state mandate.
The other question I had was on the personal finance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to keep that one in because of the heavy debt kids have today and adults with credit cards and trying to plan their retirement and spending.
We will teach it in that because we're putting economics in as a graduation requirement. Those standards that are part of the personal finance class now will be taught in that economics course. They'll also be touched on in the U.S. government course. So we're not eliminating the requirement to the personal finance class was more robust than what the recommended standards are. We believe, but we weren't requiring economics, so there were different standards, the economic systems and those kind of things. We think we're going to serve our kids better in that type of class than what the personal finance post-secondary class is.
Last question: do we have any courses on the Constitution?
Well, they was not.
That is
Strictly
being,
on that.
yeah, that's being required now at the state level. That was passed, I want to say, last General Assembly, and it has to be incorporated into the social studies program.
I'm in a separate course.
Not a separate course.
Okay.
Not totally. But like I said, we've got a robust curriculum offerings in social studies. We have not something specific to just the total study of the Constitution.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ray.
I just have some comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to address Adam's concern on the study of the Constitution, the Ohio Historical Society is stepping in to help school districts to enhance the teaching of that because of this new state requirement that it has to be included into the curriculum. That bill was passed with the thought that we need to really drive home the Constitution of the United States and the state constitution. And so those curriculum pieces were passed in the last General Assembly. As far as the speech course goes, I actually did a lot of research on both of these classes, but in the speech course, Mr. Rafe commented about the 7th grade curriculum that incorporates speech into the 7th grade curriculum. My daughter's doing her student teaching in 2nd grade, and she was in a Common Core in-service for 2nd graders, and they were having the speech incorporated into the Common Core at the 2nd grade level too. So we won't just be teaching one class at the high school level, they're going to get it throughout their career, which I think is really important. And then they'll continue it in like science or social studies where they have to give, live presentations on what they've learned. As far as the college and career readiness standards, while I support this class and I've had 2 daughters go through it, the change in 4 years from my oldest daughter to my youngest daughter and what was needed and requested for her college application has been grand. Whereas Megan went to her college interview with her career passport and walked through it. Bridget, who's a current senior, everything is online now. And she took a college class at Columbus College of Art and Design, and for her portfolio, it's all on a flash drive. And that's where it is moving. She applied everything online. She submitted everything that she has done for any scholarship or any college application. It's all been electronic. And I think that's where that needs to go with our students, creating a website about themselves, or creating a video about why they need to be in that college. That's what needs to happen. And I also think that there needs to be a larger conversation of including our guidance counselors more into this program. What I've seen at other schools, and I'm going to take Upper Arlington as an example, they have a software package where you can plug in, say your student wants to go to Tufts, you can plug in their information and the software will tell you what percentage that the chance that they will get into Tufts just by their academic standard. Now they have, I believe, 8 guidance counselors at Upper Arlington. And then like Bexley has guidance counselors that are specific to college readiness and getting kids into college. I think that this career in college readiness opens up a whole new can of worms and a whole new discussion for us in how we need this to look in the future. And so that's my thoughts on that. As far as the economics class goes, the business community has been really pushing to make that a requirement at the state level, and it does include personal finance into that curriculum. And so I would like to say that we are a step ahead in that, and we'll probably see a bill introduced this General Assembly that goes that way.
I think the economics class, my daughter took the personal finance and is in economics now, took it as an elective.
Yeah.
And it's an excellent class. I mean, she's constantly having conversations about things she's learning and then how she applies it here, and is now talking about minoring in economics in college, and never had mentioned that after the personal finance class. And so I'm just really excited that that's going to become a new requirement.
I might add, by the way, just for verification's sake, I saw Mr. Marsh about fell off his chair back there when Julie mentioned 8 guidance counselors. We're not thinking about
Right.
putting 8 guidance
I'm just
counselors.
putting that out
When you use
there.
College Prowler, they have that same
So
thing.
Gail, you
Free
can sit
online.
up.
Put in the thing and it'll tell you what percentage likely what you're gonna have based on your score. College Prowler.
Mr. White, our required government class does include basic principles of the U.S. Constitution, and there are 5 content standards that are statements that are related to that. So if you look at our curriculum map on the U.S. government class, while it's not a separate standalone course, it is a required course at every, and then 2/3 of our students take AP Government, which is even more robust. So it's a full year class where the required government class is a semester class.
Okay.
So,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Good job.
Okay, next item is item 10B, board meeting planning calendar. Everyone should have gotten in their package Exhibit A2, which, in all fairness, Mr. King was kind enough to pull together last year, and again updated it this year with content, or proposed content for every business meeting and work session throughout the year. We do have some opportunities for content in September and October that I'm sure we will fill. But I think this is an important way to get the board some visibility into items that are coming up, and obviously always have the opportunity to provide input along the way for these items and for these meetings as the year unfolds. So unless anyone has any significant changes now, maybe we can just, or any discussion to add, move on. Item 10C for discussion, the treasurer search process. So also, everyone should have received an email from me with the 2 proposals that we were able to secure relative to the treasurer search. Again, as we discussed in our last meeting, I think there was agreement that engaging a firm to begin the process was the appropriate path forward. To that end, we looked, found who was out there that could give us, that type of service. The 2 proposals we have is one from the OSBA, the Ohio School Board Association, and the second from the ESC.
Mr. O'Brien, I actually just received one from OASBO and forwarded it to you just before the board meeting tonight as well.
Oh, okay. So if you could get
Forward
that
it
to
to
the rest of the group, that would be
I'll shoot it out after the board meeting.
I have some comments if I may. I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no. I'll just summarize the proposals and then we'll go through the comments. So I would say, generally speaking, the services and the processes will essentially be the same. They both have the same construct of determining a needs assessment, interviewing the board administration on determining what are we looking for in a candidate, then kind of a recruitment or due diligence process followed by interview and selection, and then a transition process. Roughly speaking, anywhere from a 10 to 12 week process, maybe longer, depending on how fast we can proceed. Costs were, I'd say, relatively the same, though I haven't had a chance to look at the OASBO proposal, but in essence, OSBA was $6,400 plus expenses, and ESC was $4,500 plus expenses. So it's kind of where we are on fact base. So Dave, if you have some observations, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to share some comments for consideration in this process. These are, we all understand, these are excellent organizations. They have excellent reputations. Of course, because of what they do, they're extremely well connected into the educational community. I would have no objection at a first level of review with any one of these. However, what I would like to suggest is that we would choose one of these companies as a consultant based on a qualifications-based scenario first, not specifically to the proposal, nor specifically to the fee proposals they presented. What I'm suggesting is that we take a look at their experience, what they do, and make that choice. And then what I would like to do is to sit down with them in a session which, frankly, I don't even think there should be a charge for, And that's to look at the scope of the work. What are we trying to achieve? What is applicable and specific to Olentangy schools? And then from there, develop a scope, develop a program, which they can come back then and give us a proposal with a fee. And then you negotiate that fee. So for me, number one, it's about looking at this as qualifications based, specific to the needs of Olentangy. And that's important to me because I see our review as being two parts, if you will, or two phases. We already have an excellent candidate in Mr. Johnson, and I think we all recognize his qualifications. But I do believe that there needs to be a process as we would consider him or anyone else. And we have a precedent in Olentangy. We have done this before where we have promoted within, but having gone through a process. So I'm not suggesting that motions made at some meeting and that's it. There should be a process. But what I would like to do is to take that first part, that first phase, and take not a level of detail that, for me, these proposals seem to take. I'd rather go through a process where let's discover if there is an interest from other treasurers or assistant treasurers in the Olentangy system, and evaluate that in the context of our assistant treasurer, Mr. Johnson, and discover if maybe that's where we could stop, and we make that choice. If the board then would decide through these conversations, this phase one, that let's broaden our search. Let's take a more comprehensive look at other districts, whether it's in Central Ohio or outside of our area entirely. And if we would choose to do that, that's phase two, and again, the proposals and fees should reflect that. I want to mention something, let's see, I think it was OSBA had one of their items was doing this community survey to get input. Well, I would suggest that rather than doing a survey, I'm going to reflect on my own experience when we went through the selection process of our superintendent, Dr. Lucas, where we had one layer of conversation with the candidates, and there was probably a dozen of us sitting around the table representing a variety of groups. I was involved because I was the chair of the development committee at the time. So obviously my perspective was I wanted to make sure that this candidate for the superintendent position understood we had a development committee. Number two, why we have a development committee and what the implications of that are, and how do you feel about the fact that we have a volunteer committee that provides findings to the board. Number one, as a volunteer, paid just a little bit less than we're being paid here. That was a wonderful opportunity to say thanks, Dave, and to all those other people who were sitting at the table for your participation in Olentangy schools. And I was delighted to be involved in that. Didn't have a vote, completely understood that. But from a variety of sources representing the Teachers Association, etc., I believe OFK was represented, etc. It was an hour and a half dialogue. It went very efficiently. We provided written comments to the board, which Julie, of course, can speak to. And those comments were read. I know for a fact that process of actual conversation in a group setting, as opposed to a survey, for instance, had impact. And I've just heard that over the last 3 or 4 years. So for me, I think having that first layer, if we would go to a phase two, of those people sitting around the table representing a variety of groups, finance and audit. Of course, I should mention that. The chair of finance and audit would be a key person for me to be in that group. And then I could even see, when it goes to the board, I could even see the chair of the finance and audit, hopefully he would be willing to do that, and one maybe other person or two other persons who would actually meet with the board. And then, of course, ultimately, it's the board's decision. I also feel, for me, I think at a minimum, conversation ought to involve a key administrative person, so that would come to mind because of our facilities and the kinds of bond requirements that we have, that could be Jeff Gordon because of facilities, or perhaps because of the person he answers to, that would be Gail Marsh. I also think that the superintendent should be involved. I think, as you all know, we all recognize that relationship is extremely important, it's extremely strong. I also think that Finance and Audit, the chair of Finance and Audit Committee be there, and also as a minimum, there ought to be representation from staff. Now, whether that, for instance, the three associations, the three groups that have an association could get together and appoint one representative to represent all of them. For me, that's a minimum. But again, I'll tell you that having 12, 14 people sitting around that table is extremely efficient, extremely worthwhile, and I loved that dialogue. I got to hear what other people were saying as they were providing input into the superintendent's role and these particular candidates, and listening together what that candidate was offering. Now, I'll conclude by saying I understand that the superintendent, in that process, the superintendent clearly has a more broad relationship with the community. But I very much feel the treasurer likewise has a very important outreach into this community. We know about the volunteer committees, but one example was when Becky did the Finance 101 course. That was her reaching out to the community. And I'll conclude with that. If we get into a discussion about fees, I have some comments about the fees, but I'll save that. So thank you.
Well, I think I agree with Dave on a lot of what he just said. I think that's an important discussion on phase 2. I think our question on the table with these proposals, however we want to restructure them, is that initial screening. Because all that happened with the superintendent, but it was narrowed down from multiple candidates before those 3 candidates came before that group. So I completely agree with you that we can talk about how involved we need to get, how large of a group we need to get in that, final decision process. But my question is coming to your first part of what do we do in this first phase? How do we get those first things screened, when 40 people apply or 20 people apply, get those resumes read. And I think that's what these initial proposals, whether we renegotiate them for what the rest of it looks like, really needs to cover and we need to understand. Because I think there's a lot of belief out there that we just put an ad in the paper and we'll get those resumes and we'll look through them and decide who those finalists are. And I believe we need to look at one of these or whatever the OASBO is. And I saw someone else when we were talking about who does searches, and I'm trying to, it's like Battelle for Kids or something does kind of a search process too. And find organizations that can give us at least getting that first level of candidates whittled down, and then figure out what process they go through after.
I think we should look inward to a solid performer like Todd and use him right now for the position. Appoint him, which is already on here, but give him the position, set goals. If he doesn't make it, the goals that we set for him, then you can go on and do a search. But I think he's been here assistant treasurer for 4 years. Is that right? And he's been, shadowing Becky here. He was just speaking at a meeting at Moody's in Chicago, and I don't think there's any need to go reinvent the wheel and look outside right this second. We've got someone right here who can step right in, and I'm sure that he's eager to do that. And just set the goals. If he doesn't make those, then we can do a search.
And there's usually, though, it's a process that takes time. So, I'm not saying anything about Todd, but if in 3 months we realize he's not capable, and then we start a search, then you've made a determination that you've got 6 months maybe without a steady treasurer. So I think he's part of that process, and I think you have to start seeing what else is out there, and he may very well come out to be the person that's gonna fill that job. But I don't know that you can say let's try it out, and then if it doesn't work, then we'll start to think about what our other options are.
I think if he didn't, meet the standards that we have here already, then he would have been gone. I don't think it's a question of that. It's not like he's on some sort of trial basis, like, well, you're going to have to come into work and make sure you look at the numbers, and you can't be joking around. He's already done that. That's my.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to revisit the decision we've already made, right? So last meeting we agreed to engage a firm and start a process. So I think the fact that we're going and pursuing a process, I don't think there's any kind of statement against Mr. Johnson's capabilities. I think it's evidence of the diligence that we want to take and the importance of this position, that we fully vet both the internal and external candidates at the same time. Only 2 jobs we hire, superintendent and treasurer. I think for us just to jump to a path of an internal candidate, I don't think is sufficient diligence and sufficient process to fill that role. So I think, and that's frankly the debate we had last meeting. And what I'd hoped to get out of tonight was more of a decision on a firm, begin negotiating with a firm on structure and process. The OASBO thing was a little disheartening to get it this hour. Would have liked to have it ahead of time. Because my view, particularly among the 2 that we had to choose, to Dave's point, fee aside, I think OSBA was the clear choice, particularly the experience we've recently had with the ESC. They just, no offense to Becky or Jenkins, took our treasurer, placed her in another district. I don't think it's appropriate for us to reward them by giving them another placement, frankly.
I have a lot to say about that,
So
say nothing.
I appreciate the proposal, but in my mind, it was a non-starter. So I guess unless we see anything extraordinary in the proposal we got at 6:13 tonight, I would move that we start to go down a path with OSBA on developing a process, because their proposal allows for, it's not a static proposal if you'll go through these 12 steps. I mean, it's open to customization for this group.
And I want to do that first before I get into a fee negotiation with them. So I'm not prepared to vote for that proposal as it sits.
Okay.
Yeah. If we go that route, it has to be done in open session. So then it takes another meeting,
right.
And so now you're
there's
falling
no
behind.
vote tonight.
And I will, and I will tell you, Pickerington is also looking for a treasurer, and they're going through the process right now too. It's just a rash of districts who are looking not only for treasurers but superintendents right now. But based on the information that I have and the working relationship that I have with the School Boards Association and the experience that I had using another firm with the superintendent search, I could make a decision tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be an action on it, frankly, because we're not entering into a contract.
Right.
We're just agreeing to pursue a contract with OSBA, so it's not required to be an action. So I'm comfortable.
So we're not agreeing
We're agreeing to narrow the firms under consideration to 1, to begin discussions with that firm, that when we come back to the February work session,
yes,
enter into a contract with that firm.
So what happens if we make a decision here that we will pursue at least a conversation with, and then we see OASBO and we're interested in that one as well?
It's in your inbox. I just forwarded it to everyone.
I don't know that I would feel confident having time to read it.
So my sense is we can go down a path with OSBA if something miraculous comes out of this other proposal.
And you had talked about finding leaders, and they partner with finding leaders. So
OASBO partners with finding leaders. So they subcontract it out.
I'm comfortable as long as I'm understanding it correctly that we're not agreeing to this contract and this dollar amount with OSBA by saying we're not going to look at ESC.
We're agreeing to enter into discussions with OSBA to develop a proposal on a contract that will be delivered at the February, at the business meeting is going to be next.
We could do an action item at a
We
work
do the action
session.
item at the work
Yeah,
session.
we have. added
I prefer to
action.
get it going
Just-
and get it on the
Oh,
February
as
13th
I will
agenda.
ask Bo, and finding leaders is a one-time charge of $7,500.
Plus expenses, I assume.
No, it says a flat fee of $7,500. A one-time charge of $7,500.
So Julie, you're comfortable moving forward and entering discussions with OSBA?
Yes.
Stacy? Dave?
I'm comfortable with having a conversation.
Adam?
I definitely prefer them over ESC for the same reasons.
We'll come back with a proposal at the February 13th meeting with specifics, and we'll have an opportunity to move forward from there. Public participation session 2 regarding action items. Audrey Irvin. Once you get to the podium, just your
Yes, sir.
name and address, please, for the audio.
Audrey Irvin, 1232 Belden Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43229. I'm a teacher at Liberty High School.
You've got 2 minutes or 3?
5 minutes. Yeah,
5.
minutes.
So you have 5 minutes.
I started it.
Dr. Lucas, Mr. Rave, Board of Education, community members, and parents. I come here tonight ready to give one of the most difficult speeches of my life. And before I begin, please allow me to explain that I'm not pleading for my job, but instead I'm pleading for my craft. As a teacher of speech, I realize what happens in a speech classroom. And tonight I hope to provide you insight and perhaps cause you to pause before voting. Cutting speech as a requirement for our curriculum would be a mistake for many reasons. Mark Rafe and I worked together for 4 years, and he'll tell you that speech is a class that kids grumble about. And it's true. Few like getting up in front of their peers and sharing their ideas. But the fact of the matter is, most adults share the same unpleasant feeling. And this reaction is one of the reasons speech remains a necessary skill. Speech class is more than just forcing kids to speak their thoughts in front of their peers. It's a class that teaches a variety of skills, including how to manage stress when put in a speaking situation. In my class, we also practice outlining, verbal delivery, and nonverbal expression. Education has shifted to include 21st century skills, and so has speech. Through the help of my colleagues, we have worked on incorporating PowerPoint, Prezi, blogging, Windows Movie Maker, and Audacity. In speech, we're helping students not only learn how to manage stress, but how to do so and deliver a speech with finesse. Now, I realize that this decision is a financial one, but I have to ask what the value of an education is truly worth. Olentangy has prided itself on high-quality education for several years, and cutting a course such as speech as a graduation requirement because other school districts have done so is not an Olentangy-type move. Since when do we try to be like other schools? We've consistently wanted to push our students farther, to be special, to be the best, not an equal. Our mission has been to facilitate maximum learning. As an educator, we want what is best for our kids. Cutting speech as a graduation requirement takes away critical thinking, expression, delivery, and technology skills from our students. The rationale for cutting this course is increased flexibility in student schedules, especially to take AP courses. If we want students to take more and rigorous classes, then why does Liberty High School already have 29.6% of its students arriving late or leaving early from the school day already? Speech class engages our students and gives them an edge when applying for college or entering the workplace. Society needs young, articulate individuals, and speech class is the first step. Even though some students fear the class, and this is my fear, that they won't have the maturity to take speech as an elective, students who do take the class come back years later to thank us for what they've been able to do. In my 8 short years as a teacher, I've helped students prepare for scholarship competitions, speaking contests, interviews, and college presentations. I have former students that I'm still in contact with who ask me what gestures to use during a college speech. Our students appreciate the course, especially after the fact when they see its applicability to real life. As one of my former students, Ryan Mangus, class of 2011, writes, quote, as a business major, my curriculum requires me to take a class about business presentations, and 2 additional classes where presentations account for over half of the final grade. My speech experiences in the past allowed me to truly push myself toward the goal of perfection rather than simply satisfaction. Other than perhaps writing-heavy courses such as AP Comp, speech is the most practical class Olentangy students take, end quote. The assumption is that if the course is cut as a graduation requirement, speech skills will be integrated into the English curriculum. But I ask where and how? Public speaking skills are predominantly in the 9th and 10th grade sections of the Common Core in high school. And these are the very grades we use to unify the English skill set and prepare for the OGT. This sophomore curriculum in particular is already packed with rigorous work to prepare for the OGT, ACT, and SAT, tests that reflect on us as a building and a district. How will teachers maintain their high success rates and incorporate another class? What's going to give? Skills taught in speech class are not redundant to those in English.
You have 1 minute.
Giving a class presentation is different than presenting a formal speech. With the explosion of text messaging, kids bury their heads more often than not. Speech class helps students face the reality of interpersonal communication. It's a class more than just speaking. My students realize the importance of this class, and tonight, I'm asking you to.
All right, thank you. Next item is the board action item. 12A to appoint Todd Johnson as interim treasurer.
Also move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Treasurer action items.
Present treasurer action on items A, C, D, and E for approval.
What happened to B?
It's pulled out for a separate vote.
Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a motion for treasurer actions items A, C, D, and E? Is that correct?
Stacy moved.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, sorry, in here. A second?
Yes. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Treasurer action item B for approval.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Superintendent action item?
Okay, get your pencils out. I have,
Can I do? Is there discussion right before that, or is it right afterwards?
After the motion and
Oh,
second.
okay. All right.
present superintendent action items A 1, 3, 7, 8, 9, B, C, E, F, G, I, K, and L for approval, please. I'll say that again. A 1, 3, 7, 8, 9, B, C, E, F, G, I, K, and L.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to say on item J, we got great input from the development committee. If you remember, we had a presentation by a company that came in that said that they could help us save money on our
Energy conservation.
on our energy, and that I heard it here, and then I got to hear it in the development committee meeting as well. But because of the expertise on that development committee, those members heard the information, said, that's a great idea, but we think we can help you do this ourselves. And so that, to me, is a huge benefit of why we have these committees.
Yeah, I talked to Ralph all specifically about that. Those were the comments he shared.
So, again, appreciate the great work of our volunteers.
I actually agree with part of that, and I thought it could be a good opportunity to have it as an elective course. If you have get some department heads together, economics, math, physical science, and have motivated students, you could have them do the same work as a project and get credit for it, where they're tracking the usage of the school from utilities and
Talk to Career Center.
Okay, any other discussion?
Actually, I'm presenting that in a little bit, this discussion with Jay.
Jay's not one of the
Jay.
items.
Oh, I thought you presented.
Jay Pull?
Yeah.
Yes. EFGI.
I have J circle. I don't have J circle.
Jay's the next section.
Jay's coming up.
Jay's
Okay.
next.
We've covered the discussion, Jay, but it's coming up.
All right.
Great.
I just wanted to say, one that I think we're voting on. No, never mind. Go ahead.
Is there a motion in a second? I don't remember.
There is.
So last discussion item was on K. Great donation from the baseball team dugouts at Hyatt. And there's more to come on some of those in the district.
Yes,
Another gift to the district.
absolutely.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. White?
yes.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Now I present superintendent action items A, 2, 4, 5, 6, D, H, and J. A, 2, 4, 5, 6, D, H, and J.
So let's make sure we're on the same page so that we're approve the cultural and religious diversity,
Yes,
supplementals,
yes.
pupil activity supervisors, right?
Tuition-free
Tuition
attendance.
free, board update,
Board
graduation
update
requirements,
policy and
utility manager software.
yes.
So moved.
Second.
And my comments stand for J.
Yes.
Reiterate
What I
those
said before.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Ms. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, I'll now entertain the motion to go into executive session, and there will be no action after the executive session other than to come back and adjourn. And this is to consider the employment and compensation of public employees.
So moved.
Second.
Call discussion? None? Call roll.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Feasel?
Yep.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.